Good morning. My name is Craig Clark. I am the senior architect for. I completely forgot. Start over.
It's okay.
My name is Sarah Marshall, and I'm not a morning person. And I'm from Chicago, so this is actually an hour ahead. So I lost an hour of sleep, so this is really the morning for me. Still awake.
Valerie Gossage. I know everybody in the room, with the exception of it's James.
Okay.
Lisa.
Lisa Prather. I'm a business owner along with my husband. It's a family business. I'm a structure function healthcare expert. I have not been in the corporate world, so I'll learn a lot from all of you. The language is so different. I'm hearing words I've never heard.
My name is James McNeely. I'm principal of a Catholic high school. I'm an expert in teaching and learning, and I'm committed to the teaching mission of the Catholic Church. I coach our teachers to put students first and to help draw them closer to God by teaching them about the world around them.
I am a manager of a microbiology department for a pharmaceutical company, so I work with these lovely folks over here. I've been with the company going on 8 years, I think.
Shoulders down and breathe. Wake up. Light bulb in the room.
Hello, I'm Sarah Stockwell. I'm a pharmaceutical microbiologist focusing on product quality and developing client relationships that are meaningful to the business.
Okay, bicycle ride.
Yes.
That help the organization realize increased. Can I start over?
Yes, you can.
Yesterday, but what I want to speak with you about this morning is what I realized. Are you serious?
Yeah, you've actually done great.
Improves you. Thank you.
Is third, word spreads very quickly among the teachers that one of the teachers is being challenged, and all eyes are on James as how he's going to respond to this particular situation. And so, if you think emotions have nothing to do with influence or nothing to do with logic, with decision making, then I think you're wrong. They play a really, really huge. They really.
Hi, I'm Valerie Gossage. I'm a company resource expert, and I help the company reach their goals by maximizing human potential.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Marshall. I'm the CEO of Northside Community Federal Credit Union in Chicago, where we provide financial services to low-income individuals. I'm also a leader and speaker who teaches people to advocate for themselves and others through my own experiences living with an invisible disability.
I'm Lisa Prather. I'm co-owner of the Prather Practice, where I am a structure function healthcare expert. I empower people to practice a proactive, healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
You won't need it. It'll be fine.
My name is James McNeely. I'm very blessed to serve as principal of Garrett Catholic High School. I coach our teachers and best practices on teaching and learning, and I help our school stay focused on our mission of bringing our students closer to God. Indiana has the largest private school voucher program in the United States. And so a question that I often get is, do vouchers harm Indiana's public schools? And to answer that, I think you have to look at it from 3 vantage points. The first are obviously financial. People think that because Indiana is funding vouchers, that it's taking money right out of the pockets of public schools. The reality is that it's families themselves that trigger the funding that goes to schools. Indiana pays out tuition on a per pupil basis, so any school that has less students is going to therefore get less funding.
So yesterday we discussed pies, and to me one of the more interesting aspects and probably more challenging aspects of the pies model for success was social agility. It requires a lot of flexibility and ability to engage and interact with your audience. And I also think that when your social agility improves, it also increases your exposure and your image. so to me, being 10% of the overall piece of the pie seemed almost too low. I really feel like once that flourishes, that your image and exposure almost fall into place.
All right, what I want to focus on today is something that really struck a chord with me yesterday as being very relevant in our industry in education, and that's emotional influence and this concept of emotion versus logic. I think that's especially important in our industry in education because you can't get people more emotional about anything, I don't think, than their own kids. And when you're talking about the health and safety, the well-being, the social emotional growth of their own children, people get emotional and conversations get emotional. And so I conclude just by saying that the solution to this is more than just a simple solution. It's not a situation where one particular logic-driven solution is going to satisfy everything. There's emotions involved, so the solution needs to focus on addressing each of those emotions with the stakeholders.
There has been a survey done just recently, and they were asked what they would attribute their success to. And they all had one common thread, was exposure. And what they said is the people that they were building and maintaining relationships were so important to their success that when they came upon a problem, they could pick up their phone and call somebody. You know, it was that sense of community, sense of mastermind, what we're doing here today. I came home yesterday and shared what I was learning with my husband. And what we realized is we're really weak and not putting a lot of effort into exposure. And so we decided to make a commitment to work on that.
The biggest reason that performers are not recognized and appreciated in organizations is the lack of executive presence. Research shows that values in action is the highest influencing factor in the success of your executive presence. Okay, so have you taken time to think about what your values are? I mean, to really sit down and think about things that are important to you. Are you living your values? I'm going to leave you with a short story of where I really recognized my values and what's important to me. Several years ago, my grandma was in the hospital. She had had a heart attack. And I had been up there to see her several times because she was in there for, a period of time. And one day I decided to work late, do some things that needed to be done. And when I got to the hospital, there was a code blue going on. I don't know, you probably know what a code blue is. But a code blue, when you walk in, people are running around and it's very chaotic because someone is dying. And it was my grandma. So I realized at that time that my family is much more important than staying late to do some performance reviews. So I challenge you to really think about your values and what's important to you, and then live your values.
I realized yesterday was the importance of my personal core values and their alignment with my company's mission. I believe that if you're not aligned with your own core values and the company mission, that you're going to be in a constant state of struggle. And that's just going to mentally and physically just wear you out. Ever since I was little, going back to like second grade or whatever, I've always wanted to be an engineer. All I ever wanted to do was solve problems and provide solutions to enhance people's lives. That's all I've ever wanted to do. So we make cancer fighting medicine for children. What we do is essentially providing a service, a pharmaceutical life-saving product for families who have very sick kids. Until yesterday, I didn't realize how in alignment my personal values were with the corporate mission. It was kind of an epiphany for me. Like, wow, that is the reason that I get out of bed every morning, to be able to provide service for these families.
It feels unfair sometimes that it's who you know that is what actually can make the biggest impact on your career. I think the part where it becomes icky and really uncomfortable for people is the part where it becomes inequitable and where we start treating people like they're less important because they don't have the connections or because they can't connect us to particular resources. When we start judging people based on their power and their influence is when exposure is a problem. And that's the perception that a lot of people have about it. For me, exposure is about opportunities. It's about how I get to the next level and how I share what's important to me. It's having dinner with a friend who started as our consultant 3 years ago and telling him I wanted to speak more and him saying, well, then you really need to write for this industry journal, and sending an introduction to the editor and getting an email back 3 days later saying, how often do you want to write? When do you want to start? Or having a former classmate come to me and say, I'd really like you to speak to my undergraduate class about leadership. Will you come do that? And by the way, I'm going to invite the dean so we can consider you for an adjunct professor position. And 2 weeks later, being called in for an interview, and now I am teaching next fall. I didn't really want another job. but that's how exposure works. It's about building those relationships and connections with people who see what you're doing and believe what you're doing and want to support you in that. I mentioned earlier that I grew up with a rare medical condition. It's called PKU. My body is not able to metabolize phenylalanine. So what happens is it builds up in my bloodstream and it's always elevated, but above certain levels it's unsafe and toxic to my brain. And it's lifelong. So I grew up with this. I went through junior high and high school being very different. Back in the 80s and 90s, people didn't have food intolerances. They didn't have food allergies. There was no such thing as vegans back then. And so I spent a lot of time isolated in social situations because I couldn't participate in food, which is something that we deal with every day. And so I spent a lot of time not wanting to be seen, not wanting to be noticed, not wanting people to see how different I am. And there was even a couple years ago where I couldn't stand in front of a room and tell people that I had a disability. But I did realize at some point that the more influence I have and the more connection I have to people who can help me move my mission forward, the further I can go. To me, I also mentioned yesterday that social justice and equity is important to me. And I realized that if I keep hiding myself and if I keep hiding my story, no one is going to hear what I have to say, and I'm not going to be able to influence decision makers. But in order to change things, you have to recognize how things function and accept it and work within that. Power is simply a tool, just like money. It can be used for good or bad. It's up to you how you decide to use power and exposure. But the final thought that I want to leave you with is, if you want people to follow you, if you do have a mission or a value that you want to convey and that you want to bring into the world, you have to be comfortable being up in front of people, presenting yourself, telling your story, telling things that people might disagree with, and maybe even being a little bit controversial, because ultimately people follow people who stand for something.